Welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly podcast featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from fresh perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 255, Spiritual Healing for Sexual Issues, Part 1. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I'm the host. I'm here today in 818 Studios with my producer.
Good morning, everybody. This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to This Is Not My Podcast. I'm really sorry. I just completely slipped into my own hosting rhythm. All right.
Well, Dave, leave it because it is authentic, baby. It's authentic. Well, what our listeners may not know is how many shows you produce and that you do your own show.
Yeah.
No. Keep it because
all right. I won't.
Right, friends, this is authentic. If you're going down the road, you're going, wait, what's happening?
Hey,
so tell them what happened, Dave.
Okay. So I do my own podcast. It's called the 52 Qs podcast, and I have a complete script. And as soon as that muscle memory kicks in. Hello, everybody. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Qs podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things production and library music, where we blah, 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 blah. It's just muscle memory.
It is, man.
Okay, I'll keep it in. I won't.
Well, you know what? I've been at the wrong church and welcomed people. So, to a church I'm not standing in. So I love it. Well, it is authentic, and what we know, friends, the journey is full of mishaps, and we laugh and go on and say all is well. All is well. I love it. I love it.
I will say, welcome to another episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey.
Of the Authentic Spiritual Journey, Dave.
Oh,
yes.
It is so good
here
to
and
have
now,
you.
baby.
Yes, I'm here. I am present. I am here. This is what happens when you wake up, at 4 o'clock in the morning and you do all this. I've had 3 hours of office hours already, like in the studio working before we've actually recorded here. And so you just get in that mind space. But I hope that you are doing well as always. Welcome to a brand new week, episode 255. It's going to be kind of a heavier topic. And should we make kind of a disclaimer, for any little ears which might be listening for today? Are we ready?
Well, I don't think this will be. I mean, certainly we can do a disclaimer because, having said that, though, with what kids see about sexuality today, it would be really, really good probably for kids to hear this. It is a mature topic in that I think not a lot of people are talking about it, and I think it's pretty important. Frankly, I've never talked about it, I don't think, on this show.
No. It's a mature topic, but it's not nothing. It's not gonna be anything graphic or anything. I mean, just let's manage expectations. I mean, and you clicked on the title. You kind of knew what you were getting when you
kind of knew it was about sex. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So why don't you give us the title for today, Dave?
This is going to be a two-parter. This is spiritual healing for sexual issues, part 1. Spiritual healing for sexual issues, part 1.
Yeah. And, this is a really important topic to me for a number of reasons. One is I've worked with individuals for 30 years, and certainly over 50% of the people I've worked with over the years suffer from sexual trauma. And because it is such a sensitive topic, it's not something that I easily talk about in large groups because of the potential for people to get triggered. I've done talks before at churches, about sex and religion, but not about how we can heal. And over the last couple of years, I've been able to work with a number of clients with this very topic. And because of the nature of it being sensitive and the potential for, needing a minute to talk about it, I thought it would be great to talk about on the podcast so you can listen as you're ready. If something comes up for you, you can simply hit pause and come back to it later or not. I don't think this will be triggering in a negative way. I think it's going to help our listeners really think about ways that they can heal this important aspect of themselves. So if we were to just kind of take a step back, the spiritual healing for sexual issues is really about understanding that we are a whole being, right? You've often heard me say we are spirit, soul, and body. Well, what we really do in the world is we compartmentalize to a great deal. We think, here's my sexual life over here. Here's my spiritual life over here. Here is my work life over here. And in fact, they're all inextricably linked, right? That our spiritual life is inextricably linked to our sexual life and our sexual behaviors, right? And so the phrase I'm fond of is I'm a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe that is governed by spiritual law. And this encompasses the whole being and the whole beingness that we are. And so, yes, we are spirit, soul, and body. There are three distinct parts of what makes you, you, right? What makes me, me. But the sexual part is a super important aspect of us and how we express our sexuality. So, and what's so interesting, because in our culture, it's really talked about in ways that are often grotesque. It's talked about in ways that are, in fact, abusive. And in my view, children are way over-sexualized in our culture as a whole. So even if you did not experience sexual trauma as a child, simply by growing up in the United States, you have experienced sexual trauma simply by the images we see. Models are getting younger and younger. There's hardly a movie without a rape scene, and so we've gotten accustomed to these sexualized images being normal. But in fact, those images are really impacting us in a pretty negative way. And I grew up in an environment where sexual images were readily available. So this leads to all kinds of issues. One of the main issues that we deal with when we grow up in a culture that's over-sexualized is feelings of a lack of self-worth, feeling like I need to change my body to be acceptable, that frankly, I'm just not good enough how I am. And so you can see that even though they're sexual images, there's impact to us emotionally, there's impact to us spiritually, there's impacts to how then we treat our bodies. And there we are. There's the spirit, soul, body connection. And if you grew up in the church, certainly I will say, when I say the church, what I'm meaning is what I call the mainline religions. If you grew up Baptist, Presbyterian, sometimes even Methodist, some of the Catholic, there's a lot of shame about your sexuality. As a matter of fact, it's basically in the dogma that because you were born a sexual being, you are sinful. And that's the Puritan ideas, that came over on the Mayflower, right? So we have a large range of feeling that simply our sexuality in general is dirty and that it is evil, right? And so as your body is developing, and if there's any kind of body exploration, which is totally normal, if you're in the church, that's really shut down as evil and bad. So when we hold these ideas, well, the fact is, when we are spiritual beings, what happens is that there has to be some kind of acting out, because there has to be some kind of experience of that aspect of the body. And so if you're in the church and you're told that it's evil to want to self-explore, you're told it's evil to, want to be intimate with somebody you love, you find another way to express that. It's often through porn. It's through anonymous chats. And it leads, in fact, to sexual addiction and oftentimes sexual promiscuity. So this is just a fact of what is happening culturally. And of course, now with the advent of the internet, there's not as many racy magazines anymore because frankly, who needs them when we can have it in 1 click, 2 clicks away? And porn in general is a major problem and what leads to sexual violence, human trafficking. I mean, the list goes on about the negative aspects of sexual addiction. I've seen marriages break up over sexual addiction. I've seen children victimized over sexual addiction. So that's what I mean. That the very culture we live in is kind of saturated with this kind of gross unawareness about the sacredness of our sexuality. And so what I want us to get to is that we have a sacred self, that part of that sacred self is our sexuality, and that healing of that sexuality and some of those, past issues, some of those past traumas, even if you're not a victim of sexual trauma, but you simply have been victimized through imaging and over-sexualization, there is healing that is possible. So I'm going to let you take that in. I'm going to just rest for a moment. Just think about what I'm saying here. This is a lot. So we have, in the fact that we are spirit, soul, and body, we have a very, very sacred aspect of us called our sexuality. And I'm not going to jump on a bandwagon of what's the word? Politicization of what's in the media right now. I'm staying only with the spiritual. And when we understand that the body is energy, when we understand that we have a sacred purpose here on planet Earth, then we want everything that is a part of us to be in alignment with that truth. So this goes beyond a dogmatic teaching, what I'm talking about today. This is about the sacred nature of who you are. This is about the sacred nature of who you are. So with a lot of clients, what has happened is often blockages in being able to have sexual activity, or even a large degree of shame around connection with another individual in intimacy. And so what happens is that brings up shame, that brings up loss, that brings up fears of not enough. And then those issues kind of compound on themselves, so that every time there tries to be an intimacy, there's this invisible block. Well, the block, in fact, is real, and the block is both emotional and bodily. Because see, again, I'm going to help us keep dialing in the fact that even though we're spirit, soul, and body, and there's 3 distinct parts, they're part of the larger whole of you. And so if there's emotional wounding, then that impacts you sexually. If there's spiritual wounding, that impacts you sexually. If there is sexual trauma, that impacts you emotionally and mentally. See, so they're all related. And so today, yes, I'm going to get to some of the healing aspects, but it's like really getting in our minds that we are spirit, soul, and body, that I'm a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe that's governed by spiritual law. So I know anything that's up for me is able to heal, right? Anything that's up for me is able to heal. And so any wounding around our sexual nature, our sexual activity, is very, very healable through the spiritual. I've really noticed recently that in our culture, it seems to be that we've put science and psychology over faith. And even though I love science and psychology, it's not the only teaching out there. And our understanding of energy, our understanding of our spiritual teachings is going to really help the psychological and the science aspect. Because if you go to a scientist for sexual healing, what you're going to get is a pill. If you're a man and you have sexual impotence, you're going to get something called Viagra. You know, if you're a woman, you're going to get told something is wrong with you and you need hormones or a surgery. When many times, oftentimes, I know because I've helped people with this issue, the issues are primarily emotional and physical. And let me say this, energetic, which is the spiritual. So I want you to be able to apply some of the spiritual knowing, the spiritual knowledge to healing this aspect of the body, and remembering that it's not just the body you're healing. That's just how the issues are manifesting. So, but usually sexual trauma presents as shame around sexual activity or the body, you know, not wanting somebody to see your body. It often shows up as sexual activity that is hidden and anonymous, you know, that kind of moves into addiction. And all of these things are healable through the study of the spirit. And I'm going to talk about how it is healable now. So if we know we are energetic beings, and on this channel, if you've listened for a while, you know that everything is energy. And even science agrees with that, right? That everything is energy, that nothing can be created or destroyed. And so what happens as we go through life, if there is trauma in the sexual, at the level of the sexual organs, or we experience sexual trauma, what happens is we hold that trauma in those organs. We hold that trauma in that area of the body. And that happens with any trauma. Any trauma we have is held as emotions in the body. All right. So if that's true, then the spiritual teaching becomes, okay, how do I shift this energy? How do I move this negative energy out and replace it with energy of self-love? How do I replace it with energy of joy and celebration of this intimate connection? How do I remove the shame, you know, so that I can really experience all the good that God has for me through my body? Because, friends, we were meant to enjoy and have sexual activity that is beautiful and wonderful and, yes, even sacred, right? So we are energetic beings, and the teaching of the East is on what are called the chakras, spelled C-H-A-K-R-A, chakra. People often say chakra, and I often go back and forth with that title. But what we know is that the chakras are energetic spiritual centers in the body, not very different from what Charles Fillmore talks about with the 12 powers, right? From the faith I'm ordained in, unity. But the reason I love the chakras, one, they're ancient. There's an ancient understanding and wisdom around it. And it kind of opens up and moves us away from any dogma and into thinking about the energy of the body. So if you've never done any reading on the chakras, I'd really encourage you to. There's this incredible author that I've studied for years. Her name is Anodea Judith. It's spelled A-N-O-D-E-A, I believe, and the last name is Judith. It's like last name first and first name last. But she is amazing, and I've worked actually with therapists and mentors on the chakras as well. So the first chakra, which is called the root chakra, and if you ever look at a poster of somebody meditating, if you search the internet for the word chakra, you'd probably see somebody meditating and 7 colors that go up the body, and that root chakra is always red. Yeah, and that is at the base of the spine. So how we heal these sexual issues is working with the chakras, working with visualization, working with affirmation. There are even exercises to open the chakras that include movement. So it's not just a mind game. It's not just emotional. It's not just physical. It's all of those things wrapped in the spiritual. So spiritual healing for sexual issues comes through, I want to say this again, comes through the study of the chakras, the application of those affirmations. There is visualization. There is movement as well. And if you're listening to this and you say, well, I don't know if you have any sexual trauma, great. Great. I don't think I've met anybody yet that doesn't have any, but that would be awesome. And try these things because it's fun. It helps you be more open in every area of your life, and especially to create more. Because what's interesting about the chakras is if they're not moving, if they're not activated, if you're not engaging consciously with the chakras, you are missing out on some life energy. And especially the lower three chakras, chakra 1, 2, and 3 are the ones we're going to focus on today and also next week. So as you're listening, I want you to imagine the base of your spine is like a root and it's going down into the earth. And there's an affirmation for this chakra, and it is, I have the right to be here on this planet. I have the right to have. Or basically, I have a right to be here. I have the right to have. I have the right to be here. I have the right to have. I'm going to tell you a story about this first chakra because you might say, well, what does that have to do with my sexual issue? Friends, if you don't know that you have a right to be here, it's harder to know what is the affirmation for the next chakra, which is, I have the right to create and I have the right to my sexuality and pleasure. If you think you're not supposed to be here, any expression of that self is shut down. Any expression of that self is shut down. I will tell you, oftentimes in my work with men, what's so common is if there's been an overbearing mother, it's hard for men to perform sexually. That seems to be an aspect for many men that struggle with sexual issues. They don't need a pill. They need to know they have a right to be here and they have a right to have. They need to know there's room for their masculinity. You see how that relates now. I have the right to be here. I have the right to have. So what I wanted to tell you about this first chakra. So as I was first studying this, I mean, this is probably 20 years ago, maybe, and I had never heard of the chakras. I'd seen some of the images and I didn't really know what it was because it was, out of the ancient religions of Hinduism and Buddhism, the oldest religions in the world. But I had heard of them through yoga. My mom had done a lot of yoga and so I'd kind of heard of them, but didn't really know. And as I was doing some deep work with a therapist I was working with who was also deeply spiritual, we started working with this, and I just every morning began to say these affirmations. I have the right to be here. I have the right to have. And I also had an image that helped me ground to this chakra in my body. So, an issue I had really dealt with in my younger years is being really ungrounded. Frankly, I lived in a lot of fear as a child, even though there was also a lot of love. Like so many households, it had a lot of love, but there were also people I feared, and there was an environment that was not very safe for me. Maybe it was for my older siblings, but by the time it got to me, it was not very safe. So I had a lot of fear and I was really ungrounded, and there was a lot of sickness in the household. There was also a lot of sexual abuse, and there was also a lot of sexual images very available to my young eyes. There were magazines called Penthouse and Playboy around the house. in various places. So at a very young age, I saw women being over sexualized and frankly abused and things like that. So the impact on me was to be very ungrounded and to jump around and do a lot of different things. Because if I stayed moving, maybe nobody would get to me. Maybe nobody would hurt me. So when years later, I mean, I'm talking about, my early 30s, I began to do this work with the chakras. It forever changed me because I wasn't trying to get anyone's approval. I was getting my own approval through my connection to spirit. I was getting my own approval through my connection to Mother Earth, which is God to me, right? So that simple affirmation is, I have the right to be here. I have the right to have, was life-changing. Because I don't think I always felt I did have a right to be here. So see, the healing of this can go very, very deep, very deeply in your mind and heart and soul. I have the right to be here. I have the right to have. In this coming week, what my hope is that you will really work on this first chakra. That'll help us as we move into 2 and 3 next week, because the first 3 chakras, you connecting with, being aware of, this visualization piece is going to be very, very important. And I want to talk a little bit about this first chakra and how you're going to work with these ideas. So if you are interested in doing a little study, just jump on Google and look up first chakra. And I have the right to be here. I have the right to have can be a mantra for you as you go throughout the day. It can be a mantra as you sit in silence for a few minutes. And if you live in Florida, which so many of our listeners do, a wonderful way to feel grounded and working with the chakras is to go to the beach, to sit on your bottom on the sand and imagine imagine this idea. I have the right to be here. I have the right to have. And very often that base of your spine, it'll feel like it's going into the sand and grounding you into the earth. It's an amazing feeling of connection. Of course, you can do it anywhere. You can do it anywhere. The closer you get to the earth, the better. The better. So think about, I have the right to be here. I have the right to have. That's the first part of our sexual healing. That's the first part of our spiritual healing for sexual issues. You must know you have the right to be here and you have the right to have. This is a beautiful awareness of your own personal power and energy. Now, as you start to do this work, it's going to fly in the face of a lot of what you've heard about yourself growing up, about what you should and shouldn't be and have. Children are to be seen and not heard. Well, I'm going to tell you, you are to be now seen and heard. And you have a right to be here and you have a right to have. Right? So that's your affirmation this week. I have the right to be here. I have the right to have. And I want you to notice as you look at magazines or as you're watching a movie, look at all the over-sexualized images that you're seeing. Notice how it makes you feel. Notice what behaviors that kicks off. And stay with this affirmation, because this will help you stay grounded as you see those images. And you're going to start seeing them in a more conscious way. I was watching a show the other day, and there were, there's a couple shows I really love to watch. There were so many over-sexualized images. I said, I cannot watch people be abused and call it entertainment. I don't care if it's about to be over soon. I don't ever want to get used to watching this. People say, well, it's history. It's what happened. That's not part of history I need to know, because it encourages more violent, sexualized behaviors now, right? So sometimes you might have to turn something off because you're starting to become more aware. You don't want that expression of your sexuality. You want spiritual, sacred, which is fun. It should not hurt and be abusive, right? So your affirmation for this week: I have the right to be here. I have the right to have. I want you to use that to get grounded, to get in your body, get planted into Mother Earth, and remember that you have the right, in fact, to heal. And this is a part of your healing. Spiritual healing for sexual issues is going to include for you affirmation, is going to include image. You're going to be working with strong images, not sexual images, images to help you connect with the spiritual aspect of you at the level of your inner energy, called the chakras. You will be visualizing, you will use affirmation. You may have to turn off outer images as you do this healing work. So your affirmation for this week: I have the right to be here. I have the right to have. Friend, my prayer for you always is that you know you are a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe that's governed by spiritual law. You are holy, you are sacred at the level of spirit, soul, and body. And all aspects of your journey should be blessed and healed. This is our goal. So I hope you have learned something today. I hope you will work with this idea of healing at the level of the chakra. And again, your affirmation, I'm leaving you with this: I have the right to be here. I have the right to have. I look forward to speaking more about this next week, and look forward to always seeing you in person at the various events I have coming up. I know there's an event coming up in just, is it next week or the week after in May? I'll be up in Pennsylvania and in New York as well. So it's, I love when RCA is on the road. Speaking myself in third person. All right, friends, blessings on the journey, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2023, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The Soulworks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. Soulworks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience, with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the Soulworks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.